Marijuana guy.
So for some reason, everybody's writing this card off, and I'll admit I was one of them. The card was crippled with a multitude of pullouts and scrapped fights, but if you actually look at the matchups here, it promises to be an extremely explosive and eventful night. The early prelims are pretty shitty. You got some very lopsided fights. I don't know what the matchmakers were thinking here, but the card picks up in the prelims and especially in the main card. I'm gonna start off with what should be the fight of the night, with Drew Dober versus Rafael Alves. Both these guys are extremely athletic, very fast and very powerful. Alves will probably be the faster fighter, but Dober definitely has the better cardio. Dober, I think, is also overall more technical on the feet. He's a lot more precise with his punches, he has better footwork than Alves, and he likes to attack in combinations, which is important because when he throws strikes at Alves, he instantly backs up and goes defensive. And as stated before, he has power in everything he throws, but his best strike by far is the left straight, which should be a prominent weapon in this fight, as Alves fights in orthodox, so the outside foot will be there for the taking. But more importantly, because Alves doesn't deal well with straight punches, especially the jab, the straight, and sometimes the uppercut. The problem with Drew Dober is that he's pretty much an all-offense fighter. When nothing is happening, when the opponent is just throwing single strikes or very short, obvious combinations, his defense can be quite good. But when the fight gets heated, or when he's the one throwing, he will completely disregard defense and will just try to put his hands on his opponents by any means necessary. Now, most of the time, this works in his favor, as his opponents have great respect for his power. And even if they don't, he'll just walk right through their punches and land his own. So if you don't know who Rafael Alves is, he's best known as the guy who missed weight by 12 pounds. He was supposed to weigh in at 146, but due to a really bad case of food poisoning from salmon, his doctors advised him to drink water, which obviously fucked his entire weight cut up and forced him out of the fight. Nevertheless, he shares many attributes as his current opponent. He's extremely explosive, even faster than Dober in my opinion, and this athleticism transitions directly into his striking, specifically his blitzes, which come out of nowhere and is the only time he attacks in combinations. Generally, he's pretty defensive, only ever attacking in single strikes. This is because what he makes up in immense strength and explosiveness, he really falls in his cardio. Because this is a 3-round fight, this probably won't be that big of a factor unless Alves decides to come in with a very grappling heavy approach, which is very probable because Dober doesn't have very good takedown defense and Alves has a very nasty ground game. In any case, these huge explosions of his are going to be his biggest weapon, as just in Dober's last fight, he nearly got finished by a blitz from Terrence McKinney. If he decides to make this a technical kickboxing match, I see Alves getting picked apart piece by piece. Dober is just so much more experienced in this type of fight. He is much better at taking and trading punches, and Alves' low output isn't going to help him at all. With that said, Dober has taken a lot of damage in his career. I think his chin has softened up a little from all these brawls he's been in. And while I don't see Dober getting finished by strikes from Alves, I do see Alves dropping him and immediately jumping on his neck and choking him out, like he almost did to Damir Ismagulov. Then we go to the most technical fight on the card, at least among the heavier weight classes, Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith. Both guys are on a winning streak. The winner of this fight should be qualified to fight for the title next, or maybe serve as backup for Jiri versus Blachowicz. Now, Ankalaev is by far the most well-rounded light heavyweight contender. He's an excellent striker, very fast and very precise with everything, except his left hook. He tends to overswing with it sometimes. But he has a great jab and an even better right hook counter. He doesn't have many holes in his game besides his leg kicking defense. Because Ankalaev is a southpaw and Smith is an orthodox, the stance is gonna be open and Smith's leg kicks won't be nearly as effective. But it's still gonna be something to exploit. Smith is also a very well-rounded fighter, and though he really doesn't do anything as well as Ankalaev, he's shown some improvements in his last few fights. His punches are more snappy than they used to be, and he's really worked on his calf kicks. I mean, he crippled Jim Crute with those in a single round. That kind of power is going to be very worrisome for Ankalaev. He's also very strong in the clinch. He's good at controlling people there and landing knees and elbows, though I don't know if he'll be very effective in this regard either, as Ankalaev is very good in the clinch. And that's going to lead to where Smith should most likely try to take this fight, is to the ground. Because he's a BJJ black belt, he has 14 submission wins. His takedowns aren't the best, but at the same time, Ankalaev doesn't have great takedown defense. And Ankalaev's only loss comes from a submission at the hands of Paul Craig. In any case, I'm gonna go with Ankalaev by decision. Smith is incredibly tough, so I do not see him getting finished. But Ankalaev is just too technical, and Smith doesn't really present any danger besides on the ground. So I'm just gonna briefly go over Pena versus Nunes. I already covered all the crucial mistakes Nunes made that cost her the fight in an older video, but essentially, I believe Nunes came in very hot-headed and impatient in the first fight. She came in thinking she was going to run through Pena like her previous opponents. She was faced with very stiff opposition from the wrestling and the grit of Pena. From the opening bell, you could see Nunes really loading up on a lot of her strikes, some of which landed with great effects, but others didn't. And all of these strikes really wear on the gas tank. Eventually, Nunes got frustrated and abandoned all semblance of technique by trying to brawl with Pena, just trying to tank through her attacks and deliver her own. But it backfired spectacularly. And it wasn't like Pena was doing something we've never seen before, or exploiting a particular weakness. She was just reading the obviously telegraphed strikes that Nunes was throwing at her, and she was evading and countering effectively. Amanda Nunes is far better than this. She showed that she is in the first round by getting the better of Pena in literally every single exchange. Pena can still find a way to get a win. She showed that she's tough enough to take some shots from Nunes, and she showed she is able to get the fight to the ground. If she can weaponize her conditioning and just make Nunes wear herself out by constantly making her work, she could get a decision victory. But I don't think she will. I got Nunes by second round submission. I think Pena will make a mistake at some point in a grappling exchange, and Nunes will capitalize on it. And at long last, the people's main event, the rematch between Kai Kara-France and Brandon Moreno. This is actually a very important fight for the division, as it's possible that it determines the true champion. The reason I say that is because Figueiredo has to move up to 135 sooner or later. He walks around at about 150, 160, he's gonna realize this extreme weight cut is not sustainable. But back to the fight, Kai Kara-France is a training partner of Izzy and Volkanovski. His striking is not nearly as refined as those guys, and it's much more basic, but it's still very effective. His main combination is the jab to the right straight or right overhand. It's his moneymaker, it's his knockout blow. Because of this though, he tends to be overly reliant on it, and he ends up really swinging and telegraphing it. Brandon Moreno, on the other hand, is a lot more versatile in his boxing and far more defensively sound. He probably has the best jab out of the entire division, an excellent counter left hook, and a sniper of a right straight. He uses more lengthy combinations too, as opposed to the 2 or 3 strike combos you usually get from Kara-France. Now in the first fight, Kai started out the way he usually does, which is look to set up the right overhand with his jab. But he was constantly getting caught by the left hook around his guard and countered with the left uppercut when he was entering with his jab. Kai very quickly adapted to this though, by feinting the jab to draw out the lead hand of Moreno and then throwing that big overhand in his face. And it caught him very hard on numerous occasions. From the second round onward though, Moreno took over the fights, and it was through 2 simple adjustments. Firstly, he was now either moving his head or blocking any time Kai threw that overhand. Secondly, he was being far more active and pressuring, which seems to have caught Kai a little bit off guard. He was having a hard time dealing with the volume and the non-stop forward pressure of Moreno. And honestly, that will probably be the story of the rematch as well. I think Kai is just too predictable and basic for Moreno. In that 115-minute fight, I think Moreno's downloaded all the necessary data that he needs to defeat Kai. The only feasible way I see Kai winning this is if he completely overhauls his game, stops being reliant on his overhand, maybe throwing more left hooks and going to the body more. His right hand is powerful when he throws it to the head, so why wouldn't it be the case when he goes to the body with it? Additionally, he's gotta hammer those leg kicks just like Figueiredo did. Moreno is very heavy on his front foot. Some of that power and snap to his lead hand is gonna go away if Kai really damages it. Lastly, he's gotta be more composed and defensively sound, because this fight is essentially gonna come down to the power of Kai against the volume and activity of Moreno. Kai is not finishing Moreno, there's just no way. So he has to be very patient, he has to use a lot of feints or traps and capitalize every time Moreno reacts. The path for Moreno to win is very clear, but I think there's a few things he could add to make life harder for his opponents. First of all, he's gotta be wise to the leg kicks. Figueiredo landed 27 leg kicks on him. His leg was fucked by the end of the fight. No doubt that Kai is gonna come in looking to exploit that as well. And I think he should try and wrestle a bit too. Kai has very good takedown defense, but he's mainly good at defending when the takedown is all he has to worry about. I think if Moreno lures him into a striking match and shoots for his legs midway through the fight, he'll probably get it. With all that said, I'm gonna go with Brandon Moreno via decision. I could see Kai stealing one round at some point, but other than that, Moreno should win this decisively.